For the CRX today, we're going to take care of all the general maintenance issues. Do the oil and filter change, drain out the transmission fluid. We're going to fill it up with some Pennzoil Synchro Mesh. I'm going to drain all the coolant. We're going to flush the system and then refill it with some, this is a Xerox Asian Vehicle Formula coolant from O'Reilly's. One other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove that CTR crank pulley. I was talking to one of my subscribers, Senor Sancho or Senior Sancho, I don't know exactly what he goes by. He was talking about how it could be damaging, and so I started doing a little bit of research with that CTR crank pulley. And it looks like there's mixed results. Some people have no issues, some have had terrible issues right after immediately installing it. So I'm going to put on an OEM one that's balanced. I don't want any issues with the car, especially since we're going to be running it 10-12 minutes on the track at a time, at least 4 or 5 sessions that day. Do not want to risk it, and it just makes it inconvenient trying to get the car home if something does happen, or even just destroying the engine. I'm going to change out the vacuum hoses because I don't know how old they are, and I'd rather just avoid any sort of weird idles or leaks. And lastly, I'm going to install this switch right above where the radio is, the heater control panel. It just has a metal plate there. I'm going to install this so that way I can turn the fan on and off whenever needed, and I'm going to wire that up to the fuse box so that way if I turn the car off and I still leave it on, it should automatically turn itself off. While I'm waiting for the oils to drain, I'm going to finish up working on the fan. So I have the black wire. It's actually at the battery terminal. It can be grounded though, just doesn't need to be any sort of ground. Power wire, let me show you just to show how it works. I'm running it into the cabin, and I'm just testing first. And down here I have my switch, the wire's going to it. Then I have the end of the wire here, and I put a little clip on there. That way, if you look at the fuse box under here, you see this little, these two little marking, not even marks, two little slots where you can insert this little clip. We're gonna plug it into one, and I believe it's the left one, I don't recall. Let me get that plugged in real quick. Okay, so when plugging that in there, what you can do is turn on the car to full accessory, and you could hear the fan turn on. Can you guys hear when I do that? So that's exactly how I'm going to wire it. So say if the fan is on right now and the car is on, once I turn it off, listen really quickly. The fan will also shut off because it now pulls power away from there. So that way you don't leave this on accidentally and you run your battery down. So it's just a little fail-safe way of kind of hardwiring this for now. And here I got the little hole cut out, choose my Dremel, and now this thing is good to go. Switch is finished up, relatively easy install, just slightly time consuming. Then I went ahead and just grounded the fan to the ground where it normally goes for the AC unit, and then just ran the wire back and into the engine bay. I also threw on, I love these little cold air, not cold air, but this one is a cold air. I just didn't put the extension piece on. These little intakes you get off eBay, they're about $35, $40. They usually fit really well too. This one's for the SI EF, so it usually has a nicer bend, which fits perfectly when you have a MPFI swap of some sort in here. So I threw that on also, and I'm about to fill up the transmission with the synchro mesh. With the oil and transmission fluid done, I'm going to go ahead and swap out that CTR pulley for the harmonic balancer really quickly. Now I was trying to get this one on, but unfortunately it's hitting the frame rail over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to drop the engine a little bit because I need a little bit of room to be able to slide it on. Because this is a 3-rib, which has the air conditioning, the power steering, and the alternator. So it's normally not, it's a little bit wider than just a two-ribbed pulley. So I'm going to drop the engine, loosen these motor mount bolts, see if I can get it in and slide it in that way. And with the mount drop, that worked. It was just barely hitting when I was trying to install it. Now, there's still plenty of clearance. Once I bolt it back up, I'll show you exactly how much clearance there is. And then once I get the belt on, but see, this is what I meant, like this outer rib right here was catching on the frame rail, but now that it's lowered a little bit, I can easily get it in and out on there. And here's the fitment when I'm finished up. I haven't tensioned the belt yet, but you can look, there's a solid 1/2 inch between the frame rail and the outer pulley. And if you're wondering, this is actually a B20B pulley. My dad and I, about a month ago, we swapped a JDM B20B into his 99 CRV, and luckily I had these parts laying around. I had that crank pulley, and that's what I'm using on there. The bolt fits perfectly. Still have the original one off this. I could use either one, but now I don't necessarily have to worry about it. This thing, I guess, potentially destroying the engine. If you look online, maybe I'll try to remember to link a couple of those threads that I was reading in the description below. You can see that some people have put this on, and not even a day later, their engine is destroyed. Something happens to it, and that's so-called the only cause that they can think of. But it's debatable. I'm pretty sure the harmonic balancer is much better for a stock engine anyway, so that's one we're going to stick with, guys. With the pulley finished, one real thing I'm going to throw on real quick. This is rear BWR shifter bushing. I don't really think it's going to help much, but I like to solidify it a little bit, especially when you have the Hasport or innovative mounts. But if you look here, there's a lot of slop in this particular joint, so that's something I think maybe some new shift linkage could definitely help out in the future, making this a lot more crisp. Let me show you guys how I flush the system. I go ahead and start by removing the fan. It gives me a lot more access to, there's this bolt, which is on the block. I like to remove that. Also, you kind of need to, because you want to get all of the coolant out that is surrounding all of the cylinders. So I remove that, remove the fan, drain all the coolant. Then I take this connects to a hose on this side. So basically I'm going to take the heater hose and I'm going to plug it in here. I'm going to run this side to the top of the head. And here I got that flush valve installed. This hose, which normally comes from the heater core, mine is deleted, so it comes from the thermo housing, which is fine because it's still going to circulate all of the flush and all the water coming through. But basically I connect it here to that heater hose, and I run that other hose I had onto here back to the top of the head. I went ahead and put the little nut, the bolt back on for the block. You don't have to do it all the way, just do it so it stops the flow coming out. And then put on the fill plug on the bottom of the radiator, and then go ahead and turn on your hose. And we're going to fill the system up a little bit, and slowly until we see water coming out the top of the radiator. And now I'm just going to go ahead and start the car and let it run for about 2 minutes, just so the water pump helps circulate everything and get that moving. After that first time, I'll turn the water off. And then be very careful if you're close to this. I already put some water on, so it's a lot cooler. We're gonna drain the water from the block. And we're also gonna do the remainder from the radiator. That's why you don't need to tighten these up completely, just enough to stop the water from coming out. And what I'll do, I'll probably do that like 2 more times, and then we'll move on to the distilled water. Next, I'll disconnect the flush valve and reconnect everything again. Once again, the bolt on the block just needs to be hand tightened. Same with the bottom of the radiator. And now what we're going to do is fill the system with distilled water completely until your radiator tops off. We're going to start it again, then we're going to drain it. The reason I like to do that, I'll usually do it over the course of 4 gallons because tap water has minerals inside of it, which is bad for the cooling system. It can end up leading to like deposits being formed inside there, and I think it reacts with like brass heater cores and just the aluminum itself. That's why the next step I like to do the distilled, and then just completely have that in there and do it a couple times so that way any of the old tap water gets flushed out by using all the distilled water. So I'll go ahead and just fill it up, start it, run it for like another 1 or 2 minutes, drain it, and I'll do that until I've gotten rid of all 4 gallons of the distilled water. And with that finished, I was able to flush it about 3 times with those 4 gallons. Still have about ½ gallon left. And what I'm doing now, I'm just letting it completely drain out of the engine block and the radiator. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the bolt, reinstall the fill plug, and then I'm going to put my fan back on, and then I'll just go ahead and fill it with coolant. Now whatever distilled water is in there should mix perfectly fine with the coolant, so it shouldn't be an issue at all. And we're done with that for now. After finishing the flush the other day, we'd taken the car for a drive, and One of Manny's friends, his name's Danny, came over. We were kind of inspecting this, heard like a weird noise. We realized the booster is now leaking. Well, it probably had been, you just couldn't hear it. We were able to pinpoint it underneath the master cylinder. It's easy to tell. Listen when I turn the car off. So we're gonna go ahead and change that today. This one is a DA master cylinder. I went in and picked one up just for the EF SI. I've used on my track car, I'm using the stock SI one with the EX master cylinder. I have no issues. So I just went and purchased that one. It was a lot less expensive. I picked it up at AutoZone. It was like $100 at AutoZone for this one. It was like $250 for the DA one. So I figured that wasn't necessarily what I needed to do. So we're gonna try to get that swapped out really quickly. Getting all 4 of those out was actually really easy. Hardest part was getting this little pin, the cotter pin, squeezed back down straight and then sliding out from the clevis pin. But on these 4, the bottom 2 that are attached to it, you can reach with a U-joint and a handful of extensions. The top left one was the hardest. I removed the 2 10mm nuts which hold the fuse box. That way it gave me enough room to slide the extension and get the top left one. Then the top right one, I was able to slide in here and use, you can see it, it's right above that one, it's in the dark. I was just able to use this real small ratchet and I was able to get that one off. I was able to get the EF booster installed. Now we're just going to go with an EF master cylinder because one of the reasons we have to do that, see the orientation of the way the brake master cylinder sits? It goes up from bottom left to top right, where all the EF master cylinders go from bottom right to top left in terms of how the master cylinder attaches there. So we have to use an EF setup with this particular booster. I don't mind. I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. I can always upgrade to the EX1 in time, but right now I was able to just pick up this master cylinder one. Master cylinder and booster installed. And so that kind of wraps it up for everything I wanted to do to this car in terms of general maintenance. Now lastly, I need to do some coilovers and get the car aligned. So tune into next week's video, guys. I really think you're going to enjoy it. Max Speeding Rods, they sponsored me a set of coilovers to try out on this build. These are fully adjustable. They have the damping controls, of course height adjustable, different spring rates on them as well, which should be a relatively soft, not too stiff ride. We're going to get these put on the CRX. We're also going to get some just driving around town footage, see how they feel. And then we're taking these to the track. I'm going to get some on-track footage, my driving impressions before and after, and just an overall experience with these particular coilovers. So tune in, hope you guys like it. We'll see you then.